going on, guys? It's Mr. Action back at you with another episode of Packed In Action Figure Reviews, where we give you that action that's packed in. And on today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at the Marvel Legends series Spider-Man Scarlet Spider, and I'm super excited to be reviewing this figure with you guys today. It was definitely a journey trying to hunt this guy down in the wild. As you guys know, this is a very heavily anticipated figure, and I know that when I saw the promotional images that it was going to be a heavily sought after figure. So when I stumbled across it at my local Target and I saw that it was the last one on the peg, I grabbed it up so fast people there probably thought I was stealing. But again, I am super excited to share this figure with you guys today. There is a lot of hype surrounding this figure, so let's see if it lives up to those expectations. So without further ado, let's get this guy out of the box and let's take a closer look. In here we have Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, out of his packaging, and I feel like at first glance, this looks like a very well executed figure. But as we take a closer look and as we begin to dissect it a little further, we begin to see that this figure does have some flaws. Now, I am a huge Spider-Man fan, so when I did see the promotional images of this figure, I was very happy to know that we were getting a reissue of this figure, as we did have previously released versions of this figure before. I believe that was the Marvel Legends retro-carded Scarlet Spider that had a different kind of head sculpt to it. With that being said, I am definitely happy to be receiving this updated figure. So without further ado, let's get this guy off of the rotating stand and let's take a closer look. So first things first, jumping right over into the accessories of this figure, we do get 3 different interchangeable hands, which I'm very pleased with getting. I think, the more interchangeable hands that we have with these Spider-Man figures, the better. So the first pair of hands that we're going to take a look at are going to be Ben Reilly's web shooting hands, which I think came out relatively pretty decent. These hands are all molded in red plastic, so there's not going to be really too much detail on the outside of them. But as we take a closer look to some of the line work in there, we can see that there is some details in there. So he does come with 2 pairs of these, which I think is really good. Then moving right along over to his web crawling hands, as we can see again, not too much detail. We do have more detail on the inside of the hand, referring to some of the line work, but thankfully, as mentioned before, we don't have any fingernails on the outside of the gloves. So good attention to detail there, because there's nothing more than I hate than when I see fingernails on a character that's supposed to have gloved up hands. And then last but not least, we also do have a pair of fisted hands, which came out pretty decent as well. We do have some wrinkles here on the side of the gloves, which I think is really good. But apart from that, they're basically your standard kind of gloves that you would receive with each figure. The one critique that I have with this pack here is that it would have been really good if we would have had some additional web accessories to come with this guy. It can be argued that, with the other Spider-Man figures that we've gotten before in the past, that we have had a lot of different web accessories for those, so you could just have them be used interchangeably. But if this is your first Spider-Man figure, no spider webs for you. Now jumping over into the aesthetics of this figure, I think at first glance the execution of this figure has been done really well. However, I did have some issues. One of the first things I noticed with my Ben Reilly Spider-Man is the head sculpt. I think that this is a pretty good head sculpt. However, when I was doing some Google image searches for Ben Reilly to see how this mask compares to how I've seen him depicted in other artworks, I have yet to really seen this style of mask, more so with the curvatures here on the lines of the mask. I haven't really seen him depicted as such. Most of the time when I see Ben Reilly, his eyes are a little bit more on the angular side. There is some roundness to it, but there's just so many different depictions of Ben Reilly, so it's kind of hard to say if whether or not that this head sculpt is accurate to the source material. But if you can look past that, I think that this is a pretty good Ben Reilly. Then over here, taking a look at the hoodie, I actually think that they did a pretty decent job, considering that this is not soft goods, this is actually plastic, and I think the plastic is soft enough for you to still kind of get some articulation in there, which we will go over the articulation pretty soon. But I do like the attention to detail. I think that the paint work on the hoodie actually came out really nice, and even taking a look at the strings on the hoodie, you can also see that there is some texture there. So I do like the attention to detail that they did there, as far as especially when it comes down to some of the wrinkles. We do see that we also do get a lot of wrinkle work here in the back portion of the hoodie. And even looking at the inside of the hoodie, where, you know, obviously this is not going to be a working hoodie since it is plastic, it won't be able to come up, but I do like how we do still have some of the wrinkle work inside of the hoodie, which I think is really, really, really good. Then overall, taking a look at the body, I believe that this figure is reusing the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man body, which I think is a pretty good body mold. However, with that body, I do feel like this figure does suffer from small shoulders. You know, taking a look here at the shoulders, I feel like they are a little bit on the smaller side, especially since he's wearing this hoodie here. I definitely feel like the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man body is a good mold. However, we do need updated shoulders on this body mold, and I think that it would make this figure absolutely perfect. But apart from that, over here taking a look at his gauntlets, I do have a little bit of marbling on mine, which is a bit unfortunate, you know, considering that this figure does not have that many accessory pieces to it, but I don't really feel like it takes away from the figure overall. But here we do have the muscle definition, you know, which I think is really, 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 really good. We do have some more marbling over here on this gauntlet right here as well. Then taking a look at the belt, I think that the belt was actually done pretty good too as well. We do have some brown paint for the strap, and then we also do have the gauntlet pieces there in that silver. I personally would have preferred if we had some kind of metallic silver, but whether or not if that's accurate to the actual source material, I'm not 100% sure. Then we do have that little red dot here. Then moving along over to the legs, we do have your standard legs, which I also think came out really, really, really decent. We do have some wrinkles here to kind of show that he's wearing, you know, a spandex costume, and I honestly think it would have been nice if we would have had some more wrinkles maybe around his body, just to kind of show that he's wearing a costume. But me personally, it doesn't take away from the figure. Then moving right along over here to the legs, we also do happen to have his straps, which I think came out really, really good. There's a lot of attention to detail. You know, we do have the strap, we do have the button there, and I don't really think that there's a wash on there, but we do also see that there is some metallic paint there for the buckles, which I'm really happy that they didn't skip out on that, because the pieces are very small. But all in all, aesthetic wise, I think that this is a very well, nicely done Ben Reilly. One other thing to notice that I did mention is for his hoodie, this part up here actually does come up, and this part here is not removable, I don't believe, so I'm kind of scared to break it. But more than likely what I will do is swap this out for a soft goods hoodie. I think it'll make this figure pop a lot more. But that's as far as you get for aesthetics for this guy. I think, you know, so for what we have presented here so far, it's not too bad of a figure. Now jumping over into the articulation of this guy, this is probably where I'm gonna have some of my major issues with this figure. Now first things first, we are going to take a look at this head. This head can look up about this high, which I think is a pretty good range of motion. However, once we do lift this head up, you are going to see that it does have this real nasty gap up top. Even looking at it from a side angle, you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about. You can see right through that neck, which I think is a huge bummer. That is definitely going to be an eyesore for some of you guys who like to do action figure photography, but that is something to note. But again, his head can look up about this high up, if you don't mind that gappage, and his head can look down about this much. When his head is looking down, you are going to see that little indentation part for him to get his neck all the way down. One thing to note, while he can look up this much, you can push his head back, so I guess that gap is not as apparent, but you're not going to get that much rotation looking up. Then over here, moving along to the arms, his arms can get that T-Man pose, and I think that once we have his arms pose in this T-Man pose like that, it's very much more apparent how small the shoulders are with this guy. But again, you can get the T-Man pose, which I think is really, really good. We also do happen to have bicep swivel, which I think is great, and we also happen to have double jointed elbows that bend past 90 degrees, and then with his wrists, they are on hinges. They can go up and they can come down, which I think is really, really good. Then moving right along over here to the sides of his arms, he does have some real nice butterfly joints which can go back this much, and it can go forward about this much. You are going to get a little bit of hindrance because this is the soft goods plastic, but I think it's still a pretty decent range of motion considering what we get. Then moving over to the mid-torso section of the body, we do get a real nice deep ab crunch going forward about this much, which I think is really good. And we also do have a ab crunch going back. Now, because this figure is sharing the Renew Your Vow Spider-Man body, we also do have a diaphragm swivel. And I would have honestly thought that because this is, you know, a soft plastic, that we weren't gonna really get too much articulation. But as you guys can see here, we can actually get some nice pivoting side to side since we do have a diaphragm swivel underneath there as well. So we can get that ab crunch. You can't have them twisted and still utilize that swivel, the diaphragm swivel, to get some nice ranges of motion, which I think is also really good. Then moving over to the bottom portion of the figure, we also happen to have a thigh cut on this guy, which is 360 degrees, which I think works. We also do happen to have double jointed knees, which go past 90 degrees. And we also do have the boot or calf rotation, which I think is also really good for this guy. And then we also do have the toe articulation, which I think every Spider-Man figure should have toe articulation. He does have hinges that go up. There is no hindrance with those straps there, which I think is a good design. And his leg does go down on the hinge as well. And we also happen to have side to side ankle pivot motion as well. Now jumping right over along into the size comparisons. Over there to the left, we have the retro carded retro Spider-Man. And over there to the right, we also do have the retro carded black suit Spider-Man. And considering that three of these basically all share the same body, I think that all these Spider-Men hold up relatively well against one another. Then moving right along over there to the left, we have the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. And then over there to the right, we also do have the X-Force Deadpool. And here we have Ben Reilly over here next to our T'Challa. That is a custom soft goods cape. I am probably going to do the same thing with our Ben Reilly with the hoodie. And then over there to the right, we also do have the newly released Sabretooth. And for some figures outside of your Marvel Legends collections, we do have both Jada Toys Chun-Li and Ryu, or Ryu, depending on how you pronounce it. So, after all this said and done, I think this is a pretty decent Ben Reilly. I think that this Scarlet Spider came out pretty good. You know what I'm saying? Is it the best Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider that Hasbro has produced? By a long shot, absolutely. I think that this is a pretty good figure, you know, with the pinless joints. Even with the, you know, the soft plastic that's used for the hoodie, you know, it's still nice that we are able to get that range of articulation. I think that this figure is pretty good. However, again, this figure does have some flaws. Again, I do feel as if the shoulders are a bit on the small side. It would have been really nice if we would have had bigger shoulders to kind of match the overall proportions of the body. And, you know, I guess you could say the head sculpt is arguable. I really haven't seen too much source material where his eyes look exactly like that. But again, that would be debatable depending on, you know, what iteration of Scarlet Spider you're more familiar with. Now, when it comes down to the overall grading of this figure, I am going to give Mr. Ben Reilly a solid 8. While I am pretty pleased with the updated pinless body on this figure, there are still some minor flaws that prevent it from being a perfect 10. Again, some of those flaws being the shoulders, and then the next thing is going to be the articulation of the neck. I do feel like the way how his neck was designed, especially when you have him looking all the way up, you know, we do have that nasty gap that is presented, and that could be a potential eyesore or a potential flaw for those of you who are interested in getting this figure. But apart from that, I think that this is a pretty good standard Ben Reilly, and I am really happy to have it. I am happy that, you know, we do have that articulation in the midsection, despite the fact that we do happen to have a plastic hoodie on there. Again, I am more than likely probably going to change that hoodie into a soft goods hoodie, but I think that for what we get out of the packaging, I actually say that this is a pretty solid figure. So with that being said, I'm curious, what do you guys think about this Ben Reilly? Please leave your thoughts and your comments down below, and, you know, let's get this conversation started. But once again, thanks for checking out another episode of Packed In Action Figure Reviews, where we give you that action that's packed in. Please like and subscribe. Share your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Have a good day.